Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Sketchy Ideas, the Counterpoint podcast where we discuss weird new ideas or creative ideas surrounding business, leadership, personal development, and a whole bunch more stuff. I'm Brad James.
I'm Michael Rampola.
And today we're diving back into VUCA because last time we had a whole bunch of concepts. And now we're going to talk about how that works and what does that mean. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Michael to take us on the next step.
All right. So last time we talked about VUCA, that was the term that came out of the post-Cold War, as we entered the Cold War era: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Each a formidable foe on its own, but you put those four things together and you've got an almost insurmountable challenge in front of you. However, we also said that each of them is a function of something else, and therefore they can be addressed, maybe even prevented. And today we're going to explore what we're calling VUCA 2.0, the counter to each of those ideas, which is four other concepts. And those four concepts sound like.
Can I guess the acronym? I'm going to guess the acronym.
You're going to go. You're going to give us. Okay, give us.
Ready?
So
Ready?
It's not the same. It's a new one. Okay, go for it. What do you got?
I know. It's very untasty cold apples.
Very untasty cold apples. Okay, I like it. We could go with that. How about variable, unkempt,
I threw them off.
Craggy asteroids. Very unkempt, craggy asteroids.
I like that one too.
All right, but I probably not what we're aiming for.
No? Okay.
No, I mean you could. You could take that. It's either of those is
sure about it on my way over today.
Based on nature. We talked about the idea that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity are natural occurring phenomena. They're not man-made. We didn't make them ourselves, but we do have to learn to deal with them. So you want to explore maybe the antithesis? Should we give it a shot?
Opposite of volatility, vulnerability?
I like where you're going. I think vulnerability is going to go to, I don't know if this is going to be a one-to-one match. I think it's going to be interesting. So the U in our 2.0 is understanding, which I think requires vulnerability. I can't believe I have all the answers. If I believe I have all the answers, I'm surely missing something. I'm operating from a position of egotism and lack of humility, which I think is probably a surefire way back into volatility and uncertainty. All right, give me another idea. Let's connect the dots here. What else do you think would help us address VUCA, the bad kind?
So I'm trying to find a good word for the opposite of volatility. We know it's not variability, right?
No.
Or variable.
Well, how about this? We're not going to get rid of these things. We're not going to eliminate volatility. So in the face of volatility, what do we need to be ready for? Consistency. I like it. We're going to call that vision.
See.
A vision for the future, something that's going to keep me on track and give me a thread to pull through no matter what else happens. All right, now this stuff can cause a lot of. Say that again?
Or your favorite Marvel superhero.
I like it. Now, in the face of all of this, we're going to have, all right, so then these things might cause me fear and trembling, if you will. And I don't want, facing these things, I might not want to go forward. So, but I need to, because if I stay where I am, I'm going to get overwhelmed by one of the above, one of the waterfall, or any of our other, dangerous natural disasters. So what do I need in the face of all of the above?
In the face of all of the above.
In the face of fear, it is not the absence
Courage.
of fear. There it
Courage.
is.
I knew that one.
You knew that. Courage, I might even say confidence. I think both of those work there. And then that last one is the A. I don't remember if it's, it's in your Vistas model. My SMART goal model, right, felt very linear, but in Vistas, things were changing all the time and we were changing with them.
Adaptability.
There it is. You got it. So here's what I say about VUCA 1.0. There's some principles about the universe. I shorthand form is like the laws of gravity. You can't change them. You can only learn to work with them. So VUCA 1.0, we're not going to eliminate things that are volatile, things that are uncertain, things that are complex, things that are ambiguous. How do we address them and respond to them? So Brad, I know you've got a lot to say about these ideas. Vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. That feels like that's right in your wheelhouse. What do you want to share with us about those 4 leadership concepts?
Well, so if we look at vision, vision is the guiding North Star for most everybody, right? If you don't have a vision, you really don't have a direction. And if you don't have a direction, you probably have VUCA, the bad VUCA.
Right.
Right. Feel like this is like bad juju. That's how we do.
There you go.
Bad VUCA,
Perfect.
good VUCA.
Bad VUCA, good VUCA. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. And if you don't have a vision and you're just wandering aimlessly, right? And you don't even have a goal to figure out how you're going to figure out which direction you're going to go in, then you got some bad VUCA. Yeah.
Bad VUCA.
That's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're going for?
I think you're on it. Good. So that's vision, right? So lack of a vision, I'm wandering aimlessly. That is a surefire way to A, get lost, B, waste time, and probably stumble into a trap. I don't know why there's traps in my wanderings, but apparently there are. All right. So how does understanding help us address the bad VUCA?
So understanding is based on the first law of leadership, right? Seek first to understand and then be understood.
Very nice.
So if we take that approach with everything we do, we have at least a baseline picture of what's going on. And if we have a baseline picture, then we can actually take steps towards that vision.
Like it. So what's the risk? So what's the opposite of seek first to understand? What does that look like?
Oh, what does it look like? It means you're talking all the time and not trying to listen, or you're just going without even worrying about the context, or you're probably going to do harm to somebody else, right? You're going to violate natural law, which is to move forward and take care of yourself, but not at the expense of others' health or well-being. So if we look at it from that standpoint and we go, okay, I'm going to understand what's happening around me. I'm going to be able to, I look at it like, and this may strike a chord with some people, but often when I'm driving in my vehicle, we're supposed to take into account the 360 degrees around our car, at least here in the US, right? So I know for a fact that there are not that many drivers out there who do that. And the ones who do tend to get very frustrated with the ones who don't.
I think that's very accurate.
Yeah, I have a little road rage every once in a while,
we all experience that from once in a while. So defensive driving would be the metaphor here, as opposed to offensive or aggressive driving, which I would agree is definitely the MO in European countries. If anybody's ever been in one of those in the front of a vehicle. Yeah, and lived to tell the tale. Okay, got it. So then I like that. So seek first to understand, then be understood. What am I going to do about
story time at another episode?
Story time for another episode.
Shares his dashing attempts to navigate the streets of Europe in his Mini Cooper, right? As he steals a safe from a hotel or a bank somewhere in Venice.
I like it. You're about 48% right. It was a scooter in Tuscany, and I was in search of a vineyard. Like that's the real story. That is definitely there's a preview. Not movie script worthy, but coming soon. We're waiting for the green light. It's in workshop. What do we do about courage? How does courage help us in the face of bad VUCA?
I mean, courage Courage is, often I equate courage, one of the biggest things that people can do to show that they have courage is make a decision. Often people prefer to remain in indecision because it's safer. But in the long run, it actually does more harm. So when I consider courage, courage is not like going into battle, guns blazing, leading the charge, right? Like there are various types of courage. And one of the best things to do is to make a choice and stick to the choice and continue to move down that path and learn from it, right? And then move back up and understand what happens every time you take a step to make sure you're continuing to hit your vision, right? Am I going up the path the right way? Is this what we're shooting for here?
I like it. I like it. Okay, so courage is decisiveness is safety.
Decisiveness is action. Indecisiveness is safety. But decisiveness in the long run will put you in a better place.
Got it.
Sense, right?
Yes, it does.
It's not
okay,
always
so
easy. Not easy to make the decision, right? Because typically, if you're making a decision, you're going to make somebody else upset. And part of that's where I'm saying, if you make a decision and you move forward, you still have to do another survey to understand what's happening. If you're working in a team, if you're looking at your surroundings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep those people angry. But typically what happens if you make the decision, it shows leadership, it shows courage, it shows the willingness to be wrong and have to turn around to go the other direction. If you are vulnerable enough to admit it, those are all the things that I consider with courage. But it's courage in my mind is not Braveheart, right? Leading the charge of the Scots against the English.
Very nice. So courage is, and I remember I will misattribute the quote, but the line is generally, we're not retreating, we're advancing in another direction. So courage is sometimes the willingness to admit that this one isn't working. Yeah. But we're not just going to freeze and get stuck.
Right. Or continue to trudge on, irregardless of the fact that things aren't working, right? It's okay to take a pause, take another survey, and then go, okay, maybe this wasn't the best choice. Let's go back the other way.
I just made a reference earlier this morning to what sunk cost fallacy, economic theory.
Okay.
You're familiar with this? I think you and I've talked about this before.
Yeah.
So sunk cost fallacy. I've already spent this much time and money on this thing. Maybe even though it's not working, maybe if I just spend a little more, it'll all work out. I'm not checking metrics. I'm just believing that the money I've already put in, the sunk cost, I just need to sink more into it. And then it'll suddenly turn around, even though every other indicator tells me that this investment is not paying off.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with that. And I think and that's a whole nother tangent in a topic that we'll discuss another time. But I believe that more often than not, because people have committed a budget to something, they feel they have to follow it through to the end, regardless of whether or not it is working. That doesn't mean it can't work. It just means tangent.
No, I think that's perfect. And it actually goes back to your point about vision, which is, yes, I need a vision for the future. I also need those milestone checks along the way. Because if all I maintain is a vision and I'm not seeing, am I on the right path? Am I on the right track? Is this still the right way to be going? Am I making the kind of progress I expected? Oh, by the way, did I have an expectation for progress? I find so many leaders and businesses don't establish what good looks like before they get started. And therefore, they don't know if it's working or not because they didn't have anything to check against.
Yeah. And often that will come out in the planning phases, right? If you can't answer the question of what success looks like at individual steps of, let's say it's like a multi-tiered plan and there's many steps, you cannot choose that's the path in terms of if you have a better option, right? Sometimes there will be that uncertainty about it because you don't know. But in the age, like specifically, I use this as marketing campaigns. So we have creative ideas getting thrown at the wall all day long. And when those ideas are laid out, and I ask questions about, hey, so what success mean after level 1 or phase 1 or this first step of a sales funnel? What does that mean? How are you defining that this step will move enough people to the next step in order to make sure that the next step has enough implications on conversions at the end? And often what ends up happening is people have to think about it because they don't think about success that way. They've laid out a plan and they're looking at the end. And they're either not working backwards or they're not working forwards. They're just going, I think this will work as a whole, without understanding that there are incremental things in the middle, right?
Absolutely. Which pulls in another Covey principle, right? Begin with the end in mind. So that's another key leadership principle, and working my way backwards from there to establish the segments, the check-ins, the am I on the right track elements. And if I don't have those, that's typically a long road from here to success. And if I don't validate and check myself along the way, well, actually, I think that gets to our next point. I won't even be able to know whether or not I need to adapt, let alone do the adapting.
Right. Yeah. And adaptability is what all of us Eagle Scouts do, right?
Okay. What is the Eagle Scout? I was going to try and draw an Eagle Scout logo. I don't remember.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Ooh. Improvise. Sounds like a better version of what is it? Better version of survive, outlast, outwit, what was the Survivor 3-part? I like this version better. Improvise, adapt, overcome. I like that.
Yeah. The only way to go. I mean, you get thrown out into the woods for a weekend and you're told, here's a compass and here's a tarp. Good luck.
Good luck.
In there.
Hey, they gave you a tarp.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Okay. Well, let's do this. Okay. So how does one, besides asking somebody to drop me off in the middle of the woods, how might I work on my improvise, adapt, and overcome skill sets, processes, practices, if I feel like my organization, so we always say the opposite of adaptability is rigidity. You're stuck in a rut. You cannot change. You're on it. It's train tracks, right? You can't turn. You can just change speed. So,
and you run into that all the time, right? I mean, you told me so many stories about this is the way it is. We have to stay this way because if we break the mold, then we're not following company line or the company policy. And I think when you run into that and when I run into that, like with people going, well, we've done it this way for so many years and it's always worked. And I go, great. So let's keep doing it. But you brought me in to help you do it better, and let's do it better. Or let's add something on top of it, right? Because there's always a way to improve. There's no such thing as perfect in anything, right? There's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. That is one of my favorite problem analysis red flags is the Tachwati. What did he say? He said Tachwati. That's the way we've always done it. If the answer to why are we doing it this way is Tachwati, we have a problem. That's the red flag of that's not a real reason. That's a red herring. We got to dig there.
Gotcha.
There's others, but it's exactly what you're speaking to. So if you find that your organization—
Write that down, folks, Tachwati. Tachwati said—
Tachwati means dig deeper, because we've probably passed the point where the tribal knowledge remembers, right, the original reason. There's great metaphors and stories on this one, right? Like why the booster rockets on the shuttle are only as wide as 2 horses. Why the wife cuts the end off the roast before she throws it in the oven. You know this one?
Yep. No.
Okay. All right. Here's a quick one.
So share.
Okay. So husband is asking the wife, why do you always cut the end off of the roast before you put it in the oven? Well, that's the way my mom always did it. And I guess I just never asked why. And so we go to now mom, and mom says, well, that's the way your grandmother did it. And and we go to grandma and grandma says, because the pan was only this big.
Gotcha.
She always had to cut the end off the roast because that's the only pan she had available. And then, like, we never asked why I did it that way. That's what we do. It's like, that's the best part. Well, it didn't fit in the pan.
Yep.
So the Tatwadi is, more often than not, the tribal knowledge has been lost. We're so far away from the original reason. And more often than not, the original condition under which we established the rule or the guideline is dead. But the practice remains. So improvise, adapt, and overcome as making sure we're checking ourselves on a regular basis is what we're saying, what I'm hearing from you, is a way to ensure that we're not falling into that trap.
Yeah, I think if you consider, for example, I'll go back to the marketing example, right? There's so many people, it's almost 60% of small businesses and businesses in the US are still not on the internet. And
wait, give that number again.
Almost 60% of businesses are still not on the internet.
I can't.
Yeah, right? Right?
Okay. Hold on. I need a minute. Like, how in the world is that even possible?
But there's, and I look at it, right, from a glass half full standpoint of great. That means there's just that much more opportunity out there for the businesses we work with who are on the internet. But at the same point in time, when we get those clients or those clients who go, hey, we have a static web page from the early thousands that we haven't touched, and it was built with Flash in Adobe Pages, and actually, no, my favorite is Microsoft Pages, and we uploaded it to the internet and drove traffic, and everything is based off of images, right? It's all image-based. So there's no like dynamics around it. You go on your phone and the thing's like still big, so you can't read anything. And you go, okay. I always ask the question, because I seek first to understand what has stopped you, or why are you still not adjusting or adapting to the new ways that business is being done currently and will be done and continue to grow in that direction of being done for years to come? And the answers I get are the twatty, right? We don't need it, right? We've got Joe who's been here for 40 years.
We're doing fine.
Joe's great. And I go, great. What happens when Joe retires? Well, we find a new salesperson. Do you understand that salespeople right now, even though it's probably one of the most admirable and courageous careers people can choose, they're not choosing it because it's hard. And they go, well, then I guess we'll deal with it when I get there. I go, okay, well, I guess call me when that happens and I'll see what I can do to help you out. Like there's so much of like the belief system around if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which in a world where it wasn't moving at the speed that it is now in terms of dynamics, right?
Right.
So I look at, I remember the old credit card machines where before you swiped it, it was actually
it was a carbon copy, right?
Yeah, and it had this thing on top that you had to slide this way, and you put the card in there, and it like went this way, and you brought it back. Like that tool, I think I actually found one in my mom's basement at one point.
Nice.
But like that tool, I look at it and I go, credit cards used to take weeks to process or months. Yeah. Now, if it doesn't do it in seconds, the machine declines you.
Right.
And then I look at where money is moving now with cryptocurrency and like Bitcoin and how fast that stuff's happening and how fast that industry is evolving and changing. And I go, So there's this accelerant of speed with technology, and there are people who just aren't ready to move that quickly, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're seeing this too, where we're talking about VUCA, right? Good VUCA, bad VUCA, right?
Right.
And those are topics that just being able to categorize things will help you navigate stuff. And those are definitions. That's basic schoolwork. And people still don't want to do it because they go, we're good. But the COVID thing has like forced people to do something
Right.
or die, essentially.
Change or die. Yeah, basically.
At least. Yeah. We are living in a world that Darwin would be proud of right now.
There's no doubt. And he never would have, it's fascinating. You're absolutely right. How he could never have predicted the conditions under which we would be operating. But back to those core laws of gravity, the principle of change or die, adaptability, survival of the fittest, all that stuff still plays because it's these laws of nature. So back to our VUCA. So here again, so vision, understanding, courage, adaptability, those things are in nature too, right? Mm-hmm. The understanding the context I'm operating in, being decisive as a path to long-term safety as opposed to waiting around and seeing if something overtakes me or not. Like that's
right. Yep.
That's not the win. And adaptability, your Eagle Scout in the woods, so to speak, and this vision for the future, that long-range thinking. It's interesting. It's reminding me of, I'm going to paraphrase and kind of screw up an idea, but I think the idea is something like some are born great, some become great, and others have greatness thrust upon them. And I feel like we're saying the same thing right now about change and adaptability and these four concepts here. Some have good VUCA, some develop good VUCA, and others have good VUCA thrust upon them, or they die. Because if you're not able to respond to the inevitable volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, if you're not ready, right, it's too late.
Yeah. And that's not just, hey, friends, this isn't just business either, what Michael's talking about. I mean, I was looking at some other rates dealing with demographics because you guys know we do targeted avatars and all this stuff.
Right.
And so one of the stats that I was looking at that going into the whole COVID thing and like during the COVID thing, they talked about how relationships were going to get stronger at home or get severely weakened because now you were spending an inordinate amount of time that you weren't used to for the last 10 years, 12 years, 20 years with somebody. And so they're predicting that divorce lawyers are going to have a freaking heyday come 2021. And they're predicting like other things happening. I mean, there's the usage of I read a stat, advertisers now are going to dating apps more because they can target people using those apps because usage has increased dramatically.
Sure, and they're full of demographic data.
Like the things that are I'm looking at with this whole shift that's happening. What was the other thing? I mean, there's a reason why people are concerned about social media platforms, right? The volatility in those now. You create a platform and generate users, you better hope to get sold if you're a founder of one of those companies. And right now, moving forward, you might want to sell it sooner rather than later because you don't know if you're going to live.
You're absolutely right.
It's one of those things where you gotta, the technology acceleration and not only just the technology and software, but hardware, right? Like processing power is beginning to go through the roof, which is why we have this. And every year they get 10 times faster, 20 times faster, 100 times faster.
Right.
It's only going to get worse.
What's that law? Who's got that law? The law of technology, the accelerated rate of is it Benford's law? Somebody can fact check me on that. I think it's Benford's law. Somebody can look me up. But it's this idea
Brian
about
Omig.
like
Mr. Omig.
Producer.
Voice of God, can you look that one up for us, please?
There's a general law about basically it's a logarithmic scale around the multiplication of technology advancements / computing power, storage capacity, something in that neighborhood. Enough of the right terms, you'll find it. So I'm reminded of that idea, and I'll just quick corroborate your earlier point. So the business buying and selling market is getting, what I'm hearing you say is getting, especially in smaller startup M&A world, almost like the housing market where it's hard to buy but easy to sell.
Yeah.
Like now is a great time to be selling your house as long as you don't need to get into another one.
Correct. Yep. That's where we're at with. And that's where you're seeing all of these smaller syndicate funds break out because they're trying to invest in these companies so that the turnover can happen faster. So the market dynamics in that world are crazy. And the thing is, here's the deal. Michael and I are still in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So the funny part is we're seeing what's happening on the coasts, and what's happening on the coasts is like 10 years from happening here in the Midwest. Not because we're slow people, but we tend to have some roots in the Titwadi.
Mm-hmm.
So Titwadi is causing a lag for us here in the Midwest in a lot of ways.
And there's some good in that because it gives us time to get ready, as long as we're taking the time to get ready and develop the skills we're going to need when that wave hits.
I choose to look at it as like the kid who's a young kid and tells, you go first.
Yeah, right. Change is good. You go first. Voice of God. Did you find what we were looking for?
It is Moore's Law.
Moore's Law. Benford's is somebody else. I'll have to figure out who Benford was.
Like, that's not right.
Moore's Law. M-O-R-E. Got it. Okay. And then
the more you know.
More you. This is what insert graphic here. Star wipe and scene. I got a bunch more stuff. This seems like a lot of fun. But I also know we're pushing our 30 minutes here. We're supposed to be pithy and tight and decisive, maybe. Anything else you want to hit as okay, what's our takeaway? Maybe you can get us with that. Knowing that bad VUCA is inevitable, what's our takeaway for good VUCA? How do we as business owners, human beings, leaders of the now and future, how do we position ourselves for success?
I think good VUCA is, it's not just, like I look at it as like those strategic statements that businesses build every quarter and then put on a shelf and never look at ever again, but also in combination with some execution in terms of just the general skill set and development standpoint for you and your company. So it's a mixture of the strategic plan along with low-level task-based implications along with some measurements in there. So it's one of those things that if I were to do this and help a company build this, I would go, hey, let's look at the VUCA, right? The bad VUCA is almost kind of like a combination of taking into account like a SWOT report.
Right.
But the good VUCA is how you can counteract it, and it's almost like your playbook. So I've been talking to a lot of people now that football has started about, hey, what's your playbook, right? Because now you have to actually build a playbook. So if this happens, what do you do? If that happens, what do you do? And those are things that as a business leader or a leader in anything, even in a household, right? Just have a playbook. Right. It doesn't even have to be completely ironed out to the T, but if you have a playbook like, hey, if Facebook shuts down advertising for everybody, one, what are you doing to prep for it? And two, what are you going to do when that happens? What's your shift, right? That's like a marketing conversation that happens. Or if you're in sales and somebody retires or something happens to them, or you run a business and somebody goes down because of COVID, okay, what do you do if that happens? And then how do you adjust to prepare for it as well so that if it happens, you can handle it? I mean, it's a if-then math that you can pull out and use when that happens, because it's going to happen more and more and more. With bad VUCA, you got to be prepared with good VUCA. So you might as well start with the good VUCA for the bad VUCA, right?
I like it. And keep an eye and what's the line? Life moves by pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you would miss it. So don't let these things pass you by or overtake you. Be always on the lookout. Be ever aware. Improvise, ready to improvise, adapt, and overcome, because the only constant is change. Which reminds me, somewhere in there was a movie reference, which means we need to give credit to our movie reference winner from last week, which was Kristen K. from the Greater Milwaukee area. Thank you.
Caitlin K.
And there's a K. Caitlin K. Voice of God, right? Yep, God, good. Caitlin K. from the Greater Milwaukee area. Congratulations. Caught our movie reference from last time, which was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Points for you. For those who are keeping track at home, that's 1 point for Caitlin and 0 points for Brad and Michael as usual. I think we're going to hit a wrap.
Oh,
Oh, womp, womp, sad trombone.
new thing to add for next time, sound effects. I'm
Sound
writing it
effects,
down.
noted. Action items, sound effects, star wipes. Yeah, we're giving Brian a run for his money here. I think we're ready to hit a wrap, Brad. Do you want to take us out?
Yeah, so I think if anybody who's watching this or sees it wants us to explore this more, Michael and I have really talked about that this is something that we think is important right now to handle things. And I'm unsure if we're going to have a guest on in the future for this one to dive into some of this, but it looks good that is a pretty good possibility, I hope. So we'll probably dive into this at least one more time in the near future, but remember that it's always good to have a coach for all of this stuff. So one of the things that I'm going to throw this out there, we are helping a lot of clients with this type of stuff in different arrays. So if you're interested in that, you can always email us at sketchyideas@ccmediagroup.co. And then we will be also, stay tuned for the website that is launching at the end of this week, sketchyideashow.com, where you can go there, watch all the videos, get the show notes, look at some cool offers that we're putting together for you, maybe some short sheets that we'll have for you, and we'll actually begin to keep score of some things in the future. So be prepared. But with that, we'll see you next week from Sketchy Ideas. The show, remember, where just because you found that new idea and it's a sketchy one from the internet doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. I'm Brad James.
I'm Michael Rampola. We will see you next time.
Take care.